lost mine in the sand. Where will you stand?
Live from Modine, it is the Israel update a day early because our favorite guide is so busy with everything he's doing right now up on the Temple Mount, going to Gaza or outside of Gaza.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff. And I'm sure this is going to be one of those programs that people might want to grab some Kleenex here because you're going to give us an update here.
Um, okay, but let's start out with what's on everybody's mind,
Yeah.
at least everybody in the United States of
Yeah.
America, and that's the re-election of Donald Trump. Um, I was one of the, and what's funny is every Israeli, literally, every Israeli, once they hear my accent, they want to know, is Trump better or is he not? Of course, this is typically in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And it's irrelevant what I think because it remains to be seen. Now, I was one of those people very disappointed to hear that Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo will not be in the new administration. Um, Within the last 2 days, I see that Elise Stefanik is going to be America's ambassador to the UN. She is clearly tough as nails.
Yeah.
And Marco Rubio is
Yeah.
going to be Secretary of State.
And then
But
we have Kristi Noem in charge of in charge of Homeland, I think it is. So gonna be interesting days.
so, I do remember from Trump's last administration, there were a number of people, including the Secretary of Defense, and Bolton, I think was he Secretary of State? Whatever it was, the kind of in and out. There were like two
Yeah.
or three people in each position. So I'm not going to comment on that. I would be ripping the hair out of my head, except I've become follically challenged at this stage in life. So I'm not going to do that. I am really, really tired of explaining to people what Jewish Americans vote for and why. And I thought of another way to make it very clear. I do not believe that anyone listening to this broadcast should ever vote for a candidate for president strictly because they believe that she or he might be better for Israel.
Okay.
Now, let me state that again. And people are like, man, Hanoch, you really, you come from a different angle, but now you're coming from another planet. It could easily be one of the boxes that you tick off in your mind.
Yeah.
But when you vote for president of the United States, you're voting for a man or woman who you believe will lead your country to a better situation, more in line with your values relating to whether it's a right to life issue, whether it's foreign policy, whether it's economics. The best thing that America's president could do for Jewish Americans is be the best president for the United States of America that they could possibly be. There is no dual loyalty. People think, like, and the last time I was in America, among the great comments and questions that I got was, well, don't you think Harris is pro-Israel because her husband is a Jewish American and their adopted children are, I mean, seriously, y'all need to slap yourselves if you think that way.
Well,
Anyway, I am
when you talk
hopeful.
about
I'm sorry.
voting for someone, based upon where they're going to stand with Israel, that is one of my boxes.
Yeah,
I mean, and
but
that's where
it shouldn't be the box. It
it may
shouldn't
not be
be
the
the
yeah.
only criteria.
Yeah, it may not be the only box, but it is one of the
Yeah,
boxes that
yeah.
that I have to look at. So, yeah, this idea, Hanok, of American Jews, there's a reason why they're called American Jews and not Jewish Americans, and but I'm with you. I've explained it to people, explained it, and explained it. Just
I've
because you're
given up.
standing in a McDonald's does not make you a Big Mac. It's just the way that it is. So,
Now,
all right, moving on.
at the same time, hang on one second. At the
Yeah.
same time, you've got politicians in Israel salivating, slapping themselves on the back, saying this is the time to annex parts of Judea and Samaria. Trump will approve it. Y'all
Uh,
got to stop drinking the Kool-Aid. And what was at the end of Trump's last term? And again, remember, he spoke about sovereignty in parts of Judea and Samaria and then did the moonwalk backwards away from it.
yeah.
Again, Israel was on the verge, allegedly, of normalization with Saudi Arabia. And today, the Grand Poobah, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, accused us of genocide in Gaza
Yeah.
while they're meeting with the Iranians. You know, forget the whole Sunni Shiite thing. And by the way, if any of our listeners aren't familiar with the differences between Sunni Muslims and Shiite Muslims, y'all should look it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, before I jump on to the rest of my list, Mike, you were about to ask something. I'm sorry.
Okay, kind of a different level here. Oh, first of all, we see that Qatar has decided that they don't like the Hamas leadership anymore. Uh, you know, see what happens with that one. It appears that even though Trump being in, people would think because of the Abrahamic Accords, which you and I, talked about a lot when that came in, that of course this is going to bring stability into the Middle East. It appears that it just may have taken chaos to a different direction.
Listen, Hamas is not going to be homeless.
No,
They're going to go to Turkey.
yeah, yeah, and they're going
You
to be
heard it
welcome.
here first.
They're
They're
going to
going
be
to go to
welcomed.
Turkey.
So,
Yeah,
the first couple of days after the election, we saw a remarkable decrease of rockets and UAVs into Israel. That about Shabbat, I mean, they just it's like they can't help themselves. They've got to do this. It's like their hobby to lob, missiles and stuff. But what I'm seeing a lot more on red alert is not as many. Well, there's a lot of rockets, but also UAVs.
right.
Why
Drones.
the uptick in UAV now?
They're
Unmanned
much
aircraft.
harder to they're much harder to detect.
Hmm.
And again, most of this is a fear component. UAVs, drones are coming from Iraq. Missiles are coming from the Houthis in Yemen. All this stuff is going on, but the drones are much harder to detect and much harder to take down in that sense.
Okay.
And technology, it's interesting. Israel seems to be lagging behind, not in drone technology, but in anti-drone technology.
Mm.
And I remember early in the war, the Ukrainians offered to share some of their experience and expertise, and Israel declined, saying, like, we don't need that. On the other hand, of course, that was at a time when we were trying to please, King Vlad the Impaler, Vladimir
Yeah.
Putin.
Yeah.
I hope we've learned from that. So that's one element. Um, Yesterday, we got hit by 90 missiles and rockets
Yeah.
from Hezbollah. And what's interesting is while our military leadership here was running around slapping each other on the back, saying Hezbollah's rocket arsenal, was devastated and is down to 20%, they don't seem to have any shortage of rockets.
No.
And they still haven't fired most of their really big, guided, powerful ones.
Hmm.
I was in the Gaza envelope yesterday.
Yeah. Let's go to there.
It, I mean, I don't have words to now. When I say the Gaza envelope, this was a special tour in Sderot at the site of the Nova massacre and the area of the cars. Visitors do not go into any of the kibbutzim, any of the communities. The residents there, I mean, mission groups that are doing something there, I know a group recently from the Netherlands. We got to talk about the Netherlands.
Yeah.
The Dutch were recently there helping rebuild houses.
Mm,
But visitors, just as the residents put it, it's not a zoo.
yeah.
Don't come through. Now, when I'm in America, I will share more of what I saw, what I experienced. Um, and I just want to give two quick points, both relating to inanimate objects. It's if I start talking about the people and their stories and what happened, I will, I just I can't function.
Yeah.
Two things. One is Route 232, which is the local road among the Gaza communities. I don't drive regularly. I haven't driven regularly since the year 2000. Gave up the last lease I had on a car. But even I noticed that the roads are freshly paved.
Mhm.
I mean, like freshly, like the last few weeks. Question is why? There's a minor reason and a major reason. The minor reason is that when you transport tanks, you have a tank transporter. In the emergency of October 7th, we didn't have the luxury of that time.
Yeah.
The tanks had to go on the roads and they mess up the asphalt. The larger reason is the incredibly large amount of cars that were destroyed by RPGs, rocket propelled grenades, and or set on fire. The temperature when a car is set on fire reaches 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The road becomes pitted,
Hmm.
and you've got pieces. I saw it myself at a kibbutz Milfasim, of the glass, metal, and plastic embedded in the area.
Wow.
So they had to do so that was shocking. The other thing, and again, everybody that I know in America, I don't, no one that I'm friendly with lives in a major city. So everybody drives.
Yeah.
And I've seen the used car lots across America, and I've seen the for sale, new cars. I've never seen 1,600 cars. Part are rusting hulks already. Part were torched with people, and
Wow.
we can't sell these. We can't cut it down for scrap metal because there are human remains.
Yeah.
I was standing next to an ambulance where people at Nova tried to shelter themselves. Um, Sadly, to no avail. And there was DNA from 17 different individuals in and around that ambulance. I did take a few pictures of that, but it's staggering. It's staggering. And at one point, we were 400 meters. That's 4 football fields away from the fence. I was watching Jabalia. I was watching smoke coming from Jabalia. I had a good view of Gaza City. And much to my dismay, there were still a lot of buildings still standing in Gaza City. We can thank the Biden administration for that.
Yeah.
But this is coming literally days after pogroms in Europe.
Yeah.
And the coincidence, sorry, my English is bad. The coincidence of it being within a day of Kristallnacht
Yeah. Night of
is
broken
shocking.
glass. Yeah.
Jews being rounded up, being filmed, being beaten, being filmed, being told if they say free Palestine, they'll be let go, the degradation, the fact that the Dutch police did nothing
Yeah.
and stood on the side. Um, and I say to all my friends in America and Canada, coming to a neighborhood near you. Now, it is possible that the Trump administration would do something. But if you look back over the last number of years, the George Floyd, the allowance that American cities like Minneapolis, can burn. I mean, it's interesting. In the 1990s, I worked out of a building in Newark. I was a client site for a company I worked for. Now, Newark suffered riots in 1968, I believe it was, 68, 69. Never recovered. City never recovered. It was a mess. Um, my head is a mess. My heart is a mess. You're standing at Nova and it was a killing ground. Now, the guy that I was with, as I said, was there. Um, and the personal stories of what happened to he and his friends and what they saw and what they experienced um, will scar me for life. I mean, I kind of knew this going in. And I was approached recently by a tour operator that I've worked with before who asked if I guide groups in the Gaza envelope. And my response was, no, I do not. In the same way that I don't guide at Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Um, if, for the sake of argument, our Connect to Israel group, if we scheduled wanting to go down there, of course I would do it. But the idea that I'm going to, well, let's just say it's not for me. Let's just say that.
What you're bringing out is that we're not going to make the area, and I'd like to go down there at some point personally.
Yeah,
Maybe that will happen, but to make this a tourist site, um, Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial, it's
yeah,
people call it a museum. It's not a museum. It is
no,
a memorial of what happened during the Shoah. And I mean, I even hesitate to take people there. I've been to concentration
yeah,
camps and it's difficult to go to. I think it's worth going to, but to turn it into some kind of
no.
a museum piece is totally wrong in my opinion. What's happening in Europe right now is that which happened during the time of the Shoah. The Dutch government. There was I know I heard of an Arab, a Druze,
Yeah,
who stepped in and is
right.
responsible for many people being alive. Probably
Yeah,
the Dutch police coming in late, arresting however many people, and then the next day only 10 of them are still in prison. This just shows where the sentiment is. Hanok, I want to go back to something. You mentioned the cars. Uh, I can't imagine what that must have looked like. Um, but you said trying to figure out what do you do with these cars because you can't just take them and recycle them because they have still human body parts, blood. And this may sound to some people, maybe nobody listening to this, but it's like, well, just get rid of the car, just take it and recycle it, in the dumpster or whatever. But this brings out the sanctity to the Jewish mind, the
yeah,
sanctity of the human body that we have been
yeah,
given upon this earth.
yeah. There's no compromise on that.
Yeah,
And
I watched blood being washed off of the French Hill bus station,
yeah,
the wall right there. I've been next to where suicide bombings would be, and the the incredible detail. You guys have whole trained groups of people just for the sake of of collecting the body parts because of the belief that the body, the human body, is sanctified, because that is what we are or have been given to house this our being during our walk on this earth. That is
Yeah.
sometimes that is looked over by other societies.
There were also cars there. Uh, and in the case of the guide yesterday, friends of his who were murdered, um, the Israel tax authorities reimbursed all the families for the cost of the cars.
Wow.
You know what the book value was. Um, but it's just, and then you see a couple of the Hamas vehicles that are there, and you see that the front had the battering ram, and the back, I guess, the flatbed area. I'm sorry, I don't know the terminology, but the part of the truck had the boxes for ammunition and had the swiveling turret for the machine gun.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got stories that will perm people's hairs. But let me just move on really quickly. A quick word, a follow-up of the firing of our former defense minister, Yoav Gallant. I said it was all politics, and guess what? With Gallant out of the government and Gidon Saar and his faction in the government, they have enough votes to block the idea of pushing for Haredi ultra-Orthodox being drafted into the army. So, I mean, I know our system and I know the way it works. I just wanted to give a quick follow-up on that. Um, Quick thing. And then I'm going to leave on an incredibly positive note from yesterday. Um, Har HaBayit, Temple Mount, amazing things are going on. The crowds are getting larger, more frequent, and louder. Uh, but not only that, as I've mentioned on the Israel Update a number of times, every apartment in Gaza that our boys went into in the search for weapons and terrorists, they all have these massive pictures or wall hangings of the Temple Mount and how important it is. And we at High on the Har are working what we call now the Mikdash Market. Instead of the store, it's the Mikdash Market, Mikdash being temple, to have pictures of the temple. Well, guess what? I was viewing. Let me try this in English. I was visiting briefly with our dear friend Udi Merioz, and Udi has three new paintings that include the temple. And of course, the person I was with, he gave one, and how could he not give one to me? I hope this comes out in our in on the. Can you see that? Okay.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So yeah, this is so great things are happening, and that's a large part of what I hope to share. But one of the people that I met yesterday was not in our group, but she was working with a group of volunteers. Is a woman by the name of Yocheved, Kim, I think her English name was. An American, was working. Anyway, make a long story short, she came to Israel as a volunteer and decided to create a clearinghouse of all volunteer opportunities in Israel.
Mm.
So she created a Facebook site called Sword, not Swords, Sword of Iron Volunteers. And it's actually through that site on Facebook that I connected with the guide, the Nova survivor that I went to the Gaza envelope with. And she's doing an amazing job. And I found out a little bit about her, and then I met her. So her site has over 39, her page on Facebook has over 39,000 followers,
Wow.
being connected with all kinds of volunteer opportunities in Israel. She was I guess in the sales part of a construction company in the Dallas area. Turns out her brother was serving in the IDF, and she came over and was going to stay for 2 weeks and volunteer. After 2 weeks, she notified her company she's not coming back
Yeah.
and has stayed here and continues to do this. She is now all of 23 years old.
Wow.
For those of us who look in the mirror and say, I'm not worthy, what am I doing? I'm just one person. Here's one person, and if you'll pardon the expression, a kid,
Yeah.
23 years old, who said, and now she doesn't work for a nonprofit. I have no idea how she puts food on the table in her apartment. I have no idea. But she is a tireless energizer bunny going around. The other thing is being in the city of Sderot. Sderot. Sderot began being hit with rockets from Hamas in 2001.
Yeah.
Now, a good trivia question would be, when did the Iron Dome system come into effect? That wouldn't have been until 2012. Sderot was a city of about 21 to 24,000. So how many people live in Sderot now? 35,000.
Wow.
The spirit throughout Israel, the resilience, the feeling of when we say Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live, we're not blowing smoke up your skirt, kids.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff. So there's a lot to be encouraged about, a lot to learn from. We could do an entire program of what is going on and when does Israel consider, you know, the war with Hezbollah over? When would Israel consider the war with Gaza over? Who's going to take over in Gaza? We don't know. We don't know. But again, I caution everybody, don't expect President Trump, President-elect Trump, to do every single thing that would be ideal for Israel. Just a caution.
Mhm.
I hope and pray he does, but I'm hedging my bets.
Yeah. He's still a businessman.
Yeah.
So yeah, he will make decisions based upon that. So we'll just it's I said on Shabbat to our group, I said I'm going to do exactly what I would have done if Harris had been in. I will watch what's going on. I will not I will not follow just the American news, no matter which whatever news agency a person watches. I will not follow what's happening based upon social media, and I'm not gonna make my decisions based upon what somebody says, but the
You
actions.
know, again, one of the things I said in my last presentation, and for this remark, I was heckled um, in Louisiana when I said, y'all need to take back your country. And maybe America has been given a last chance. Maybe, like I said last week, y'all should be thinking of the old Superman TV series, the never-ending fight for truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting, Hanok, that the elections were between the Torah portions of Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah, and the election was during the Torah portion of that we have the introduction of Abraham. And so, yeah,
Well,
it may not be the only box that I check when it comes to things, my decisions of the world. But let me tell you, Hanok, it's the largest box that I check.
and that's totally fine. Again, my issue is for those people who say, this guy was born to a Jewish mother.
Yeah,
This woman was
yeah,
born to a Jewish
yeah,
mother. Why don't they love Israel as much as I
yeah.
do? And you know what? Just say no to drugs, guys. Come on.
All you have to do is look at George Soros. I rest my case.
Allegedly.
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 Yes. Yes. Okay.
I'm not convinced, but that's okay.
I know. All right. Well, hey, take care and give my regards to the folks you run into over there.
I sure will.
Like
I always
Udi and
do.
Yehuda and various ones.
Well, you know, I always do.
Look forward to seeing you on your turf sometime relatively soon. I'm just not sure when.
Okay. Sounds good, Mike.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.